Doctor, you fell asleep? No nerves to keep you awake then.
Oh, come on, Jen. Hello, doctors, and welcome back to Griff Notes. In today's episode, we'll be exploring the very first 6-star operator that I ever promoted to Elite 2. Early on in my account, there was always a struggle trying to find enough resources to fully power up my roster of characters. When I first started playing, I didn't spend very much money in this game. I really relied on the free summons that you would get to collect whatever rare characters that I could. I didn't re-roll, I just sort of went in blind and tried my best to get as far as I could with the characters that I got. I was lucky enough to get characters like Hoshiguma and Exia and Ayafiala early on in my campaign experience, but I immediately found that it was very difficult to find the resources needed to promote 6-star operators, beyond all the other operators that I was using at the time. The very first highlight operator that I pulled for specifically was Chen. She was fantastic. She's one of my favorite characters and still is. But I also found that with Chen, getting her to Elite 1 promotion was totally fine. She was more than capable of handling many of the enemies that I needed her to deal with in the campaign, and I found that it might have been risky promoting her early to Elite 2 compared to some of my other operators. If my memory serves correct, not long after Chen did Magellan come out, and that's when I became very curious. A summoner? A 6-star summoner? The thought occurred to me that perhaps investing into an operator that can take on the role of many might be the efficient play. Now, many might say that Magellan isn't necessarily considered one of the top meta operators, but at the time, I had lots of fun using her. She provided such versatility to my teams, and investing my resources to promoting her first, I found was incredibly helpful. I wouldn't recommend it to every doctor out there, mainly because it does require a lot more involvement as far as gameplay is concerned and your strategy is concerned. She isn't quite the type of operator that you would just set and forget and watch as they mow down waves of enemies with zero effort. She requires a lot of planning and careful decision making and timing even when you're considering each map and its layout. But I have to say that for anyone who's willing to take upon the challenge, if they're lucky enough to pull a 6-star summoner like Magellan early on, I would consider giving it a shot. These type of characters are costly to invest into, but when you're still in the process of building your operators, making sure your snipers are strong enough, making sure your casters are strong enough, having one operator that can fill that gap in the meantime for quite a while, I found was super critical. The power scaling of Arknights has changed over time. Certain operators now are just so much more powerful than some of the old guard. But I still think there's room for characters like Magellan to make an impact, and if anything, it might just be a way to have a lot more fun when you're playing through those earlier stages, having to really feel engaged with a sense of strategy as you jump in. Ah, here she is. You know, for the longest time, I actually called her Magallan. Magallan. I had no idea it was Magellan. And then eventually, I actually went through the voice lines, and then when they released the English voice for her, I was well informed. So, Magellan it is. But she's great. Great art. I always thought, you know, she has such cute characteristics. I love the penguin theme that she has going on, and it's fantastic. It's also kind of cool that in her original art, that she's sort of all bundled up in her like winter exploration cloak, and then when you promote her to Elite 2, the cloak sort of comes down and she's more relaxed, and it just seems so cool. And she has all her like tech surrounding her. It's very neat. The only thing I wish is that the drones had more of a penguin-esque design. I think that might have been a little bit fun. Her skin is sweet. It looks super cool. I think that the theme around food, some of the culinary themed skins that came out were really neat. And I just love that she's serving up some flavored shaved ice. It makes a lot of sense considering, you know, where she spends most of her time lore-wise. I like that Emperor is just hanging out back there too. Like, you know, it's just a nice little addition. As far as her abilities are concerned, this is where it all comes together. So the whole idea for her and summoners in general is that she has these little robots that she can bring to the field, And there are certain rules around each of the drones here based on the specific skill that you bring. For her skill 1, high efficiency freezing module, this one's really all about crowd control. So you would place these drones around the map, and the whole idea here is that they greatly slow down enemies as they march towards the exit. And the key thing here is that when you actually activate her skill, all the drones that you have placed, now they're much more effective binding the targets instead of slowing them. So if you're in a map where pressure is very fast paced and enemies are coming in from different directions and they're slipping through on the sidelines, then this would be a skill to consider. Oftentimes she was used for this skill on certain high difficulty advanced stages earlier on. I don't think people use Magellan as much these days in advanced content, but there's some fun utility there. So for Magellan's second skill, laser mining module, it's a pretty fun drone that you can place on ground tiles, especially in front of a defender or an operator with high block count, because the whole point of this module is that while it can't block enemies, it will attack all enemies on the tile that you've placed it on constantly. So let's say you have Kuora or Hoshiguma or any of these other defenders, and you place them in a choke point where all the enemies are funneling in. You could place her drones in the tiles in front of these defenders, and then they'll just go to work, just spam hitting all the enemies in that one square. It can be kind of fun to use. I found that generally it doesn't feel quite as flexible or as powerful as her third skill, where if you're using her for damage, it would be the skill that I would generally recommend, so long as that there are enough high ground tiles to support it. And of course, finally, Magellan's third skill, Armed Combat Module, is her bread and butter. These are ranged drones that you would place on high tiles, and they basically act like mini AoE snipers. They don't have a massive range. I believe it's a 3x3 range similar to the short range snipers like Schwartz, for example, or Province. So if you have clusters of enemies, especially weak low defense enemies that are coming in large groups, or if you have enemies like the exploding slugs, for example, that you don't want to put your precious operators nearby, you can put these drones by them instead, and they can just go to town and clear up those enemies before they even get close. Now, what's really interesting regarding any of her drones is how they interact with her second talent, optical refraction accessories. With this talent, as you place her drones down, they'll gain invisibility for a rather lengthy amount of time, which means that if you ever find yourself in a map where there are ranged enemies that cause a lot of problems very, very quickly if you place an operator near them. For example, there's a map in chapter 5 or 6 or so where there are very powerful casters that sit idle right from the beginning of the stage, and they'll sit there for a while, and they make it really difficult to place your operators because the moment you place one down, they just all immediately laser focus that target and blow them up. So being able to place drones that are invisible can help thin out that crowd of enemies quickly so that your operators have some breathing room to be placed in positions without fear of incoming damage. Now, something that's very important to note regarding all three of her skills is that if you activate her skill to enhance the properties of her drones, after the skill is over, all of her drones get retreated automatically. You don't lose them forever. If they are successfully retreated via the skill, then she will sort of collect them back into her inventory. If you manually retreat a drone, or if the drone is destroyed by an enemy, unfortunately that drone is lost for the stage. So when it comes to using her skills, this is where the tactics come into play. You will have to be very careful as to when you decide to pull the trigger on these. While they will become extremely powerful and really help you out in a pinch, you'll have to redeploy those drones very quickly after if you wish to set up the same way again. Oftentimes it'll take a little bit of knowledge of the stage, or once you get sort of a feel for how the enemies tend to spawn in many of the stages, then you'll have a better sense of when it might feel safe to activate some of these skills. One thing that should be interesting just to take a quick peek at are her modules. Now, while I haven't invested into them personally, I do think they're worth considering if she happens to be one of your favorite characters, and if you end up really enjoying her and you want her to stay relevant in later content, then it's always worth considering the modules, especially if they have decent improvements to the character. So for her first module, what's really interesting here is that it makes it so that her first drone will not consume deployment slots. So that really just opens up some freedom for your team in case you already have a built roster and you don't want to spend all of your precious deployment slots on drones alone. Otherwise, the module will upgrade the duration of invisibility, which can be kind of handy. But in a really interesting interaction, if the drone is deployed right next to Magellan, she will also get the invisibility. So depending on the design of the map and how clustered your ranged units have to be to each other, this could come in clutch if you really need to protect her, because she is quite fragile, and if she goes down, all her drones go down too, so something to consider. Now, as far as her second module is concerned, I think that this one's better for general use. She'll be able to have more drones in her inventory in case you need to lose some by quickly retreating them. And also the cost of each drone being deployed goes down, so it's always handy. But more importantly, she can use stronger variants of her drones. This is really just a module that was meant to just give her a boost in terms of just raw power and potential output. Ever since we had a 6-star summoner like Ling show up, who just decimated enemies on her own with her magnificent dragons, who I love using for trust farming. I think this was really a module that was meant to give Magellan a little bit of love in a way that was just more straightforward. Another module worth considering if you really love this character. Alright, so this walk down memory lane would not be complete without a little showcase of Magellan at work doing her finest with her drones to help support her team. So we'll be jumping into Chapter 5, Stage 3, which is the stage that I was trying to remember earlier, and also a stage that still lingers in my memories for some reason, possibly due to some sort of trauma failing it over and over again back in the day. But let's take a dive in and take a look at what we're dealing with here. So it's a very fast-paced stage with lots of enemies moving very quickly towards our exits, and we have to deal with these elite casters that spawn in at the beginning of the stage, which makes deploying our operators a bit of a pain because they're strong enough that at the time, if your operators are not well enough developed, they can get smoked pretty easily by these casters. So we're going to jump in. We have Magellan, level 60, elite 2, with her skill 3 at mastery 3. And then otherwise, we have just a full team of your everyday average 3-star characters. I mean, not average, I mean, come on. We have legends like Melantha. We have memesters like Cruz. We have, you know, Spot. He's happy to be here, right? Yeah, of course. Anyways, we're going to drop in. We have Ansel, everyone's favorite waifu. Okay, so we're going to start this off, not with Magellan, but with Melantha, just because Magellan is quite fragile on her own, so we just need Melantha to deal with at least one of these casters. And luckily we have enough time to spare to do so. And then we're going to have Magellan come in and support the bottom right quadrant of the map.
What are your orders?
Let's retreat Melantha and get a defender out. We'll get Cardigan because she's pretty handy at sustaining herself. We'll get one of Magellan's drones in the upper left quadrant to deal with one of the other elite casters. So things are looking okay so far. One thing we'll do is we'll actually activate Magellan's skill just to really accelerate the speed of in which we are dealing with these casters. I'll place another drone in the upper right quadrant, and because her skill is already active, it's already gaining the additional accelerated effects here. So I'm going to place Spot on the top left quadrant so that he can block that exit for us. Now mainly support him with one of the drones here. So that AoE drone is going to just sort of help him prevent any leaks. And then the caster in the upper right hasn't been finished off quite yet, so we'll just get another drone there. And then so far we're looking okay. Let's get this third drone on the bottom left corner facing south to deal with any of the enemies coming in this way. And we're going to just sit back and enjoy the show a little bit as enemies come in. We're not going to activate her skill just yet. Spot, I'm going to activate his skill just to kind of keep him topped up. We're gonna wait until there's some much more dreadful enemies. So that drone on the bottom left actually got destroyed, so we did not get it back in our inventory. That's okay. because we do have extra drones to play with. So activated Magellan's skill again to really just destroy these casters as they enter. We're gonna get another drone back to go help out Spot since it got auto-retreated. We have another caster coming in from the bottom left. We're gonna get Melantha down and another drone to help her out. Let's get Midnight down and then maybe a healer for now because he's gonna take a bit of damage. I'm just sort of stalling a little bit just to get Magellan's skill back up. So right now things are looking all right. This drone is going down, but we're gonna place a new one immediately. Oh, wait, no, the drone actually survived. One more hit. I'm gonna heal Cardigan. And then I'm gonna place another drone facing Spot so that we can deal with that caster. Looks like Melantha's taking a lot of damage there. Oh, we need to heal. All right, Spot, heal yourself. I'm gonna activate Magellan's skill to back him up. And now this part's a bit tricky because we have enemies that are quite strong, so I'm gonna put a healer down. I'm gonna have Ansel, my favorite waifu, to heal Spot. Cardigan can thankfully heal herself, so we should be okay here. And then otherwise, who can we get to support these guys down here? I'll get Midnight down here attacking. We can get Plume down here attacking. And there we go, mission accomplished. Whoa, that was a little bit stressful. And whoa, I almost screwed that one up. Well, there you have it. A little look into my past to see what my very first E2 6-star operator was. Magellan, wonderful little penguin drone artist. At the end of the day, it's really important to play with the characters that you have the most amount of fun with. There are characters who are considered meta and top tier and all that fun stuff, but if you have sort of a spark of creativity and you see characters with interesting abilities that seem to appeal to you in your strategy, you know, I always recommend giving it a shot because at the end of the day, if we're not having fun, what's the point? If you thought this video was interesting, I would be happy to hear your thoughts. I'm so curious to know what sort of operator you decided to promote first to Elite 2. And maybe it wasn't even a 6-star, maybe it was a 4-star operator or a 5-star operator. But I'm curious anyways. Please let me know in the comments, and otherwise I look forward to seeing you in the next video, Doctor. Take care.